Tuesday, August 27th, 6 p.m. Can I have roll call, please?
Alex. Here. Berkson. Carter. Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Hartke.
Here.
James.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Kibler. Langenheim.
Here.
Maxwell.
Here.
McGuire.
Present.
Michaels. Mitchell.
Here.
Petrie.
Here.
Quisenberry. Richards. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Schwartz. And Kurtz.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. Before we go into approval of the agenda, on your desk is pages 59 to 62 in your Wednesday night packet. Please make those changes. And let's have a motion for approval of the agenda and addendum, please.
So moved.
Rosales, Aaron. Any discussion or addition? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And let's get started with Scott and the Nursing Home Fund.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right, for the 2015 budget for the nursing home, if you would go to page 2 on your narrative, I'll basically be covering the narrative that I have between pages 2 and 5. The revenues are basically, or always based on census plus the payer rates for Medicare, Medicaid, and private pay for the most part. So if you take a look at the table that's on page 2, the budget assumes a census of 200. Through July of this year, we are currently running at 202.5, and that's an average year-to-date through July. Our current census, probably for the last few weeks, has actually been running over 205. Today, the census was 206. Our Medicare census, you can see on here, year-to-date, 16.7. We're running right in that area between 15 or 18 on any given day over the last few weeks. So census has been very strong this year, as reflected by the year-to-date and the current census. So the budget is actually conservative in terms of the expected census in the budget. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be happy with a census of 200. We're always striving to fill every bed as much as possible. But the budget is based on 200 with 18.5 Medicare. Medicaid, you can see, is 107. Now, the year-to-date of 119 is very skewed because in June, we had a total of 2,134 conversion days, meaning that we had over 2,000 days that were converted from private pay to Medicaid. Those are individuals that have been waiting for their Medicaid applications to be processed. In some cases, we had, I think, 1 or 2 that had been waiting for over 2 years to get their applications processed. Now, that also means that we weren't being paid by Medicaid during that period, except for the Social Security checks or retirement checks. So that census year-to-date is very skewed, and you should take that with a grain of salt. So the 107 is more reflective of what we have seen in previous years, and it's well within range. Private pay at 71, and the VA, we're budgeting at 3.5. And again, I want to point out that our VA census this year, averaging 3.2, is the best that we've ever seen, and we are starting to see more referrals from the VA, both on the inpatient side, but also on the adult daycare side. And we've just renegotiated our contract with the VA, so I think we are set up very well to get more VA referrals in the future.
Scott, does that have anything to do with what's taking place in Washington on the VA and how they're opening it up to other issues, or is there something else there?
It's separate, but I'm also hoping and crossing my fingers that it's going to help us get more referrals from the VA. So we are the only facility in the county that has a VA contract. Going over to page 3, and I won't go through the numbers, but the payer mix is not, there's no significant changes to the payer mix in the budget compared to where we are now. And again, take the Medicaid payer mix in 2014 with a grain of salt. It is higher than what it actually is. The revenue rates, which is the other component that drives our revenue numbers, Private pay rates have been increased by 4%. Our Medicaid rate reflects a increase of $5.11 per day that went into effect on July 1st. And what I had mentioned to the Board of Directors is I have absolutely no understanding of why, but the state budget included a significant increase to the Medicaid rates for every facility in the state, and we were able to get a $5.11 increase. And that rate of $154.63 does include the IGT that we receive. Our Medicare rates will increase by 3% on October 1st, which is the beginning of the federal fiscal year. And again, I am not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, but the feds have increased our Medicare rate, so that is also a good thing. In addition, we were able to renegotiate our Medicare Advantage reimbursement rates with Health Alliance in the course of negotiating our dual-eligible managed care agreement. So we are now going to be paid the same rates that we do under traditional Medicare Part A. Theoretically, we could see our Medicare Advantage average rate increase by $26.50, but I conservatively increased our Medicare Advantage business by 5% or $5 per day. But we could see another $20 increase per day, depending on the type of residents that we see. Under additional revenue assumptions, adult daycare, again, I am not assuming a significant increase in volume in the budget. We have been averaging about 15 residents this year on any given day, and that's an increase from about 11 or 12 in previous years. Adult daycare, if you look at it as a standalone program, is estimated to lose about $40,000. But as based on a question that Mr. Maxwell asked me earlier today, I did get some preliminary statistics. The adult daycare program was always structured to be a feeder to the nursing home and not a standalone profitable enterprise. So in 2012, and these are not firm numbers, we have had at least 7 admissions from adult daycare to the nursing home. In 2013, at least 7. So far this year, we've had 3. So right now, one Medicaid resident that's in the facility for 1 year will generate about $50,000 to $55,000 in revenue. So if we get one Medicaid referral from adult daycare, it's more than covered the loss that we're seeing this year. So again, if we're seeing 3 or more admissions per year, it has definitely been a worthwhile enterprise as a feeder to the nursing home. In addition, we've had significant interest by both the VA, Molina Healthcare, and Health Alliance in our adult daycare program. We are the only nursing home in Champaign County that has an adult daycare program, and I believe there is only one other senior adult daycare program in the county. Not the caveat, but they have also asked for us to put together an outpatient therapy program and offering that to our adult daycare residents. And again, the reason why is Health Alliance and Molina Healthcare are being incentivized to keep people at home. So if they refer someone to the adult daycare program and they give them a little rehab, their thought is that maybe they can defer placement into a nursing home or even assisted living for a later date. So translation is we could see an increase in our adult daycare program and also make some more money on an outpatient therapy program. So I think if this is all part of the strategy that we have to move this facility from point A to point B. And based on the feedback that we're getting from our customers, which are the payers, they're telling us what we should be doing. So to me, it's a no-brainer that we should take a look at implementing an outpatient therapy program. And again, we have those costs, estimated costs, included in the budget for next year.
I understand that you're looking at some extra income, but certainly there's probably some extra expenses that go with that when you have a rehabilitation program. So do you kind of think what the net of that would be if you're losing almost 40 and whatever? Is there going to be a net income or is it going to be a net loss? Because you have to pay for the therapy and stuff.
Right. With outpatient therapy, our existing therapy company will provide the labor. And the way it's structured is we basically pay them 75 cents on the dollar on the fee schedule. So we don't make a lot of money on the outpatient therapy, but again, the big driver is it will drive more business to both the adult daycare program, and then eventually, you know, if we're providing the services that the health plan wants, they're going to see that we're providing good quality care. They're also going to be more apt to refer us more Medicare Part A and long-term Medicaid business on the SNF side to keep those beds filled. So the outpatient therapy should generate positive revenue. I haven't run the numbers yet. I'm trying to get some volume estimates from the therapy company on what we could expect. But again, because they are already providing therapy on the inpatient side, they can move their therapists between the outpatient and the inpatient program, which keeps the cost down. And again, we don't have those labor costs. They're providing the therapists. So that really keeps our exposure to a minimum.
Hi, how are you? I need a little bit more clarification in the math that you presented to us in relationship to moving somebody, or your argument why it turns out to be profitable in the long run for the adult daycare, even though it's a losing proposition. If we just look at those numbers, if 50% of those people in adult daycare end up in the nursing home, and those people will be on Medicaid, I thought what the nursing home was paid from Medicaid did not cover everything, all the costs of an individual who was in the home and being paid for under Medicaid. So how is that going to generate $55,000 a year?
Well, it generates $55,000 in additional revenue per Medicaid resident on an annual basis. So because of our current payer mix and the level of our census, we can afford to take additional Medicaid residents on the nursing home side. So the name of the game is to keep all the beds filled. Now, we have to keep a certain payer mix, but we have been able to get a payer mix where our Medicaid is less than 60%. So adding a few more Medicaid on an annual basis doesn't hurt us. It actually helps our bottom line by keeping more beds filled. So even though adult daycare may lose $40,000 a year at an average census of 12 or 13, if we are receiving referrals from adult daycare to the nursing home side, it is a worthwhile venture to do.
Jim?
Okay, when I look at this, cost of agency nurses or contract nursing is starting to go up again. So I'm not sure where these additional funds are going to come from. We're looking at going back up to almost $1 million again. In the 13, it was $450,000, and somehow it's projected to be $700,000, but yet you budgeted to go back to $650,000. What are you doing to address that issue that it's going to trend back down? And then on the labor side, you go in 2015, which I think you need more people, because I think that's the problem with the agency nursing issue. You increase the labor numbers by 10%. How do you pay for that labor if agency nurses are eating up so much of your payroll?
Well, the labor in the budget is based on filling all the open positions. So if you take a look, there's a big discrepancy between our actual labor cost numbers estimated for 2014 and what's budgeted. So, you know, a perfect example, if you take a look on page 6, at the very top of page 6, the first line item is regular full-time employees. The second column from the right is our annualized 2014. $3.8 million is estimated for this year. The budget has $4.48 million. And again, it's because we have a number of, we always have turnover, and we have unfilled positions that we always have on an annual basis. The budget is based on filling all the open positions. So agency does not take into consideration that we would have full staffing. So if logic says if I'm going to have all my staff positions filled, then my agency cost should be zero. But the fact of the matter is, I know that we always are going to have agency costs, so I have to put something in there for agency. I reduced it to $650,000 because it's my hope that we're going to be able to get our agency costs more under control. I'd like to get it back down to where we saw it in 2013. And the issues that we have this year is that we have a higher number of CNA vacancies, specifically on night shift. And we're having turnover there, and it's an issue that we are actively addressing. If someone leaves, especially if they resign, we try to do exit interviews so we can get a handle on what the issues are, so hopefully we can address them. But it's very difficult to get staff who are leaving to spend the time to do an exit interview. But we're trying to do everything we can to try to reduce our nursing turnover. So the $650,000 reflects my belief that we'll be able to have some impact, but hope is we'll have a bigger impact on an actual basis.
Josh?
Yeah, to add one more thing, I think the new union contract we negotiated with AFSCME is going to give us some help on this. A lot of these contract nursing numbers come in when people aren't coming in on the weekends. That's where and holidays, and that's where a lot of our problem comes in. There are new rules in the contract that are going to cause a greater demerit situation for those who call in on weekends and things like that. So I think we're going to have some help with that end, because the budget will look better on that contract nursing as we are able to manage some of our problems with employees better.
All right, so on the expense side, I know we've covered a little bit, but the wages, union and non-union, reflect a 2% increase, both this year and in the budget for 2015. Health insurance expenses, the budget actually reflects a 12% increase. I know the actual increase that we're going to see this year is going to be less than that, but I left it at 12%. And IMRF expenses reflect the drop from 9.92% this year to 8.97%. The major issues with non-labor expenses has already been discussed. The primary one is the contract nursing. The second is the food service. So because we have the new food service company, the dietary budget looks a lot different because their professional services, which is $731,460, basically reflects all non-labor expenses except for supplements, and includes labor expenses excluding the line staff, cooks and food service workers. Those individuals are still county employees, but the director, the new dietitian, are all on the payroll of the food service company. Any questions before I move on to the capital? All right, so the capital expenses that I have in the budget total $551,900, and you can see there are 6 different items. Electronic health records at $115,000, the adult daycare, outpatient rehab equipment of $25,000, computer replacements of just under $26,000, and the room furnishings for the Medicare and the resident rooms. Medicare $20,000 and $41,000 to the resident rooms. And what that is addressing is the fact that in the replacement facility project did not include the minimum furniture that's needed in the resident rooms. So these numbers reflect what we need to get in those rooms. I mean, it includes, you know, basic necessities like chairs, bedside tables, and over-the-bed tables. The biggest ticket item that we have in the budget is a very rough estimate of a dryer lint remediation system. And again, this is also reflective of that we don't have a very good, we basically don't have a lint collection system currently with our laundry system at the nursing home, and it has caused from day one significant issues with our boilers. And so the lint, we need to put a lint remediation system into the building. And again, with this number, based on an estimate from GHR Engineering, it is not a cheap fix, but I know it's something that we're working on further with Mr. Gleason and with the facilities department, and I believe with the Facilities Committee moving forward. But again, it's a very rough number, but it is a high priority issue that needs to be addressed. And that's all I had, except to answer any questions.
Please.
I don't, and my understanding is food, as I look here at your budget, we went from 581 million to 0. That's all encompassed in the new food service management? Okay.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, one other thing, Scott mentioned the room furniture issue. We're creating a sort of subcommittee in the Nursing Home Board of Directors that's going to be interested in development. We're hoping to have some community fundraisers. We know that there's a lot of goodwill between the community, especially those who've had family members live and pass at the nursing home. We're going to look for ways to raise money with the goal of making the nursing home more like a home. And any community watching, we're going to be coming out in the next few months with some ideas about how we hope to do that. And, you know, everything from flowers and furnishings to pictures on the wall and things like that. So we are taking steps to make the nursing home a more comfortable place while we're still meeting quality needs and so forth.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Gary.
I would, if it's possible, I would like to speak in support of this budget. All right?
Would you like? Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. I refer to everybody to the strategic plan and how it fits into the county's goals on page 8 of the budget. Under County Board Goal 1, bullet point 1, we're to operate the county nursing home effectively with financial independence. And then the next two goals were to offer long-term skilled nursing, memory care, and adult daycare services to citizens without regard for their ability to pay. And to maintain services that are, third bullet point is to maintain services that are conservatively priced and offered to anyone who demonstrates a need. And then under County Board Goal 2, we're to develop a long-range plan for budgeting and implementing appropriate facility maintenance in a timely fashion. The first goal, bullet point under County Board Goal 1 and the second and third, there's a great deal of tension between being able to accomplish those goals. In other words, financial plus being able to serve the indigent. And also that we're challenged with responsibility of maintaining that home, physical plant of the home. We've been in the business for 100 years, and I think we should all be proud of our record for what we've accomplished in the last 100 years. And I don't mean we as a board, but I mean we, the staff, management, and the citizens of this county over the last 100 years. Much has been accomplished in by the home's management and staff in the past 2 years. The home's board of directors is active, engaged, and effective. The home's quality of nursing has improved significantly, and the home's finances have stabilized. Much remains to be accomplished. Changes in health care and our aging population will challenge our ability to provide skilled nursing facility care in the future. We have a good facility with many good and caring employees to help meet those challenges. The FY15 budget calls for significant capital improvements to the home as well as a $340,000 deficit. The deficit will be financed from the projected operating cash balance. This is not a long-term solution to meeting the county board's strategic goals. Therefore, I suggest the board consider eliminating or reducing the debt service on the $4 million supplemental bond. And my question to all of us is, do we want to give the home the best opportunity to operate and maintain our facility on a sound basis, or do we wish to continue to operate the home from year to year while managing each challenge as best we can along the way? This is our decision, and this is what we should talk about in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Are there any other questions for Scott? Okay, then, we have another fund, or any, or are we complete? I'd like a motion to place on file, please. So moved by Stan, second by Gary. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. And we appreciate your work at the nursing home. Let's move on to GIS Consortium.
Are you ready? Okay, the Champaign County GIS Consortium is a joint venture. The joint venture was created in 2002 via an intergovernmental agreement. The consortium has 7 member agencies, one obviously being the county. The others include the City of Champaign, City of Urbana, the University of Illinois, the Village of Mahomet, Village of Savoy, and the Village of Rantoul. The consortium is charged with providing member agencies and county residents with quality regional geographic information system data and services, or GIS data and services, that help improve cooperation, cohesiveness, efficiency within and among the member agencies. Per the intergovernmental agreement, the GIS Consortium has a policy committee. That committee was established to provide oversight to the consortium. However, the budget is being presented to the county board because the county is the lead agency of the GIS Consortium. So they're the lead agency of that joint venture. The consortium funding primarily comes from each of the member agencies. The consortium also has some outside contracts where we also receive some of our funding. With regard to the budget, there really aren't any significant changes to the budget in FY 2015. There has been a 2% membership increase that was approved by the Consortium Policy Committee for the 2015 fiscal year. This is the first increase that we've requested from the member agencies in in 3 budget cycles. This increase should cover the rising cost of health care and wages. Overall, the total expenditures outside of personnel costs, so things like commodities, services, capital, have actually decreased by approximately $2,000 from the previous fiscal year. With regard to the fund balance, I know when you look at the consortium fund balance, it kind of goes up and down. So our fund balance experiences quite a bit of variability from year to year, and that's primarily the result of we're charged with acquiring orthophotography every 3 years. So the member agencies pay a portion of that each year, or a third of that, over the course of 3 years. And then on the 3rd year, we experience the expenditure. And then in the following year, we again receive revenue. So you see up and downs in the consortium fund balance. That's really all I have to tell you about the budget, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Patsy and then Geraldo.
Hi.
On page 41, I'm looking at line 336. Sorry, okay. On page 41, I'm looking at line 33610, which has to do with Piatt County, and I notice they've chosen not to participate, or?
No, in 2014 is orthophotography acquisition year. So 2014, we did acquire orthophotography in 2014. And we always acquire orthophotography with Piatt County. So actually, they paid their portion in 14. And so then they'll pay again in 17 for their portion.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Geraldo.
That was the line in question
All right,
for me
thank
as
you.
well.
James.
Where do you keep all of your data?
The data is stored upstairs in the IT department, but it's all distributed. So we distribute it to all the member agencies. We actually have an interactive web mapping site, which you may be aware of. And so that's how we distribute all the information out to the public. And we also have some internal ways we distribute information to the various departments within the county as well.
Do you know, do you have dedicated equipment with the IT department, or are you running
Right,
off
so
of
the
theirs?
consortium, all the consortium equipment, furniture, everything is purchased by the consortium, so
Okay.
it belongs to the consortium. And yes, we have 2 or 3 servers upstairs. Well, we had 3, I think one is being phased out right now, but.
Okay, thank you.
Any other, Patsy?
I forgot one other question. It's on page 42, and it's line 53351. And if I'm following correctly, it's the $44,000, which is equipment maintenance. Is that contracts that you have for your maintaining your equipment, or what exactly is that?
The majority of equipment maintenance is for our licenses, so we utilize our GIS software is through a company called Esri or ESRI, and
Okay.
so most of that is just annual maintenance fees for that. But we obviously also pay for maintenance fees for Microsoft, so for all the Office,
Okay.
server, things like that. So that's the bulk of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions? Chris?
I know I say this every year, but I just want to point out the extent to which all of the member agencies save money by having this be a centralized function. I mean, this is a real labor and cost saver for governmental agencies across Champaign and Pike County. So this is definitely something we need to be supportive of.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion to accept this on file, please. John and Ralph, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. GIS fund. Is anybody here for that? Oh, that's Deb.
Okay, the GIS fund is on page 48. So you just heard from the GIS consortium. The GIS fund is actually collected, it is a fee collected through the recorder's office. It is a separate fund, and it is the source of revenue from which we pay into the GIS consortium. The fund is supported by a $10 fee. $9 of it comes into the GIS fund, $1 stays with the recorder. This revenue stream, as other recorder revenue streams you heard about last night, are somewhat declining. They are not where they were at the height back in 2008, 9. And so we are doing some correcting with the fiscal 15 budget. The only expenditures being budgeted out of the GIS fund in 15 are for the membership fees to the GIS consortium and the 1/3 of the, for the annual cost of the orthophotography. Previously, you'll see the equipment maintenance line item was budgeted at $7,500 in fiscal 14. It's at 0 in fiscal 15. We had been using the GIS fund to pay for Esri software for the Supervisor of Assessments Office, the County Clerk, and the Office of Planning and Zoning, because they all used the GIS system and needed that software within their offices. General Corporate will now be picking up that expense because I don't think it's sustainable to continue paying for that out of the GIS fund and still maintain our commitment to the consortium. And that's all I
Any
have.
questions? All right, I'd like to have a motion to place this report on file. So moved, Chris, second by Aaron. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to place administrative services that because of the late hour last night, we did not continue. We moved it to tonight. If you have your Tuesday night book with you, that would be page 181.
178.
178, of course, is the correct number, right?
So we have 3 budgets that we did not go through last night. The first one is the county board's general corporate fund budget. And this budget is presented with very little change. Basically, it is status quo in terms of your operations. The revenues are fairly stable. The cable TV franchise fee is the largest revenue source, and it is staying at about $260,000. And then the expenditures are in personnel for the county administrator and for the chair and per diems for the board members. and the rest are just expenditures. I would point out that the attorney legal services and professional services, as you will recall, reflect your contracts that you've entered into a couple years ago with regard to the two Mahomet Aquifer initiatives, and so we just keep carrying those forward until we've spent them or until the projects are completed. If there are no questions on that one, we can go ahead.
Patsy.
Every year, I encourage that line 53395 on page 179 is increased so county board members have more opportunities to have some professional development opportunities, and it's only at $2,000, which doesn't go very far for 22 board members.
That's correct. And I believe that that's a decision that's up to the county board, because your direction in the budget process resolution is to basically maintain the status quo unless there is a definitive reason. So, but I can tell you that the annual NACO conference in 2015 is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we've done an assessment of what it would cost to send one board member with bare minimum reimbursements, and it would be $1,675. So I offer that to you just for your information in case you as a board want to make some other request or recommendation with regard to conference and training. Mhm. The next budget is administrative services. This budget, too, is fairly stable. The revenues are fairly stable. We are seeing somewhat of a decline in vending machine revenues, and I don't know if that's because our employees are more health conscious or, what, but anyway, we're seeing somewhat of a decline there. The goal for the vending machine revenues is to cover the expense of the annual employee recognition event, and it still does cover that expense, so that's a good thing.
With the increase in price, that helps.
The increase in price?
Yes, when the candy went to 75 cents to $1.
Yeah, I think it discouraged people from
The
using
soda
it,
went from
because the
$1 to
revenue's,
$1.25,
the revenue's down.
And I always
so,
don't have enough change for that
Yeah,
machine. Okay.
so. Basically, though, other than that, this is a status quo budget, unless you have any questions.
I have a question. I wasn't aware about a car. There's automobile maintenance in the budget?
Yes, administrative services owns the van that the custodians use to run the mail and run basic
Oh, I see.
errands around the county. It's ironic because physical plant owns the vehicle, but administrative services owns the cost of the services because we pay for postage, and it's used primarily for moving mail around. Mhm. Oh, it could. It doesn't have very many miles on it. Okay. If there are no further questions on administrative services, let's look at the general county budget. Now, this is an important budget for all of you. This is where most of your revenues that are not fee-related and directly related to certain department functions are received, and you have a number of expenditures that you make out of this budget that are also typically not department-specific. So looking at the revenues, based on what is happening with the quarter-cent sales tax this year, it is being budgeted at a 2% increase for fiscal 2015. The 1 cent sales tax is doing better this year, so it is budgeted, I believe it's at a 3% increase on an annualized basis for fiscal 2015. The corporate personal property replacement tax is something that the state tells us about in terms of what we can expect for the first 6 months of 2015, so based on, because it aligns with the state fiscal year, so that increase corresponds to what we will be receiving from July 1st, 14 through June 30th, 2015. On the expenditure side, what I have tried to do here is maintain the status quo. We have $80,000 for the contract with the outside auditor, which is established by their contract. $30,000 for attorney's fees, which is typically what we try to budget so that If there are negotiations or legal issues during the year that we need to pay for, there's a budget for it. There's $36,000 for soil and water conservation, which is flat. That's what they received last year. $24,500 for the Urbana Free Library Archive, also flat. $2,250 as a grant to Children First, which is flat. $2,000 for the fees on the General Corporate Fund Bond Debt Service. We pay for the fees out of this budget. $22,807 as a grant to Senior Services, which is a 1.5% increase, as you were told by RPC on Monday. Number 8, $485,051 to the Capital Asset Replacement Fund for General Corporate Capital Needs. This is based on funding the Capital Asset Replacement Fund with full reserve for future years, which we have not done since 2008. So this is a $238,650 increase over what the capital contribution was for fiscal 2014. It's a starting point. I don't know if you will leave it there, but I thought you should know what it would take to fully fund the capital asset. This is not for facilities. This is for vehicles, technology, and equipment over $5,000 that the departments have and use for their operations. $82,000 for the highway fund to reimburse for the mechanic who services all of the general corporate departments' vehicles. And $169,620, which is equal to 0.5% of the fiscal 14 general corporate fund budget as a contingent line item in fiscal 15, and $100,000 assuming the continuation of the grant for reentry programming. So that's what the expenditures are in the general county budget.
Stan?
Is it getting close to time to rebid the audit services? Didn't we say we were
I
going to
believe
do
there's
that?
one more year on that contract, yes.
Okay.
Patsy?
Just a clarification on the, you mentioned funds that we pass along to the Urbana Free Library Archives, and last night, the circuit clerk mentioned the same. Are these two different contributions?
Correct. We have always contributed from general county, but the circuit clerk is interested in expanding the county's contribution to the archive. It was something that the previous clerk was not interested in, but they certainly do more for the portion of funding that the county has provided has stayed flat for almost 20 years, so it represents a much smaller percentage of their total operations. So I think the circuit clerk is trying to get that back to a point where it's more reasonable. Thank you.
James?
If I could add something to that flat rate historically has been for the Urbana Free Library to host the archives. What's never been done before, and what the clerk is talking about doing, is when documents are delivered to the library for storage, for archiving, there's never been accompanying cash to support the work that's involved with cataloging and protecting those documents. So it's been independent of the volume of work that is required for the Free Library to do that. And that's where this is going. And this flat fee has kind of been the thank you for hosting this fee since 1993 or something like that. And the clerk is now trying to get it to the point that when we hand them a ton of documents, we give them something so that they can pay someone to catalog it, file it properly, make it accessible to the public.
And just for your information, from having sat in on the meeting with the clerk in the library, I think the goal is that we will develop an intergovernmental agreement so that it's clear to everyone what the expectation of the county is and what the expectation of the library is with regard to this funding.
Rachel?
On the reentry, I was very supportive of that. Is there any way to get an update on where they're at and where they're going, and whether we should really put the next 100,000 in?
They're providing quarterly reports, and the first one, I believe, was provided in August, and they will provide another one. And there are board members, I think, Jim McGuire and Astrid are on the reentry council.
My understanding was we were going to get our first report in September or October.
I think you already
Did we actually
received
get
the
one?
first quarterly report.
Okay.
So I don't think September is time for a second quarterly report. It's possible maybe October is, I can check on.
Was there actually anything in the first quarterly report?
Very little, because
Okay.
it's all about just getting startup
Just-
Okay.
going.
I just remember somebody badgering Astrid about it and her saying that there was a more detailed report coming soon, so.
Diane?
Deb, if I could ask you really quick to refresh my brain, on 33616 on page 187, looks like the Village of Mohammed is paying us money. Can you remind me what that's for?
Daycare for John Jay.
Oh, that's a TIF reimbursement.
Okay, thank you.
Stan, did you have anything? Stan? Over here, Jim? Jim, go ahead.
I can give you a quick report. There actually is a case manager that's working with people that are leaving the county jail and making contact. In the last month, she'd made 60 contacts with people that had come out of the county jail and had been working with 40 people and giving them access to a lot of the departments and programs and, and their families to support them already. And so they're actually moving forward with a lot of things that are happening. As they're building the program itself, we're planning on going to Rockford to see what they're doing with their reentry program. Of course, community elements, can't think of the Prairie Center is involved in all those programs, trying to find people jobs. All those things are happening. As they build the program, they've applied, of course, for the grant for $600,000 and those sorts of things, so.
And just one additional note, you have a contract for 1 year, which goes through March. So budgeting, you won't actually spend the full 100,000 in the first year, because some of that's going to be spent in 2015. And then there will be an opportunity for the board to determine whether or not to renew it, or what they want to do as next steps, so.
Chris?
I just want to add, my recollection is that the justice assistance grant that we were applying for from the feds was a federal fiscal year grant. So we should be finding out about that sometime in the next couple of months,
I
right?
think October is when they anticipate. Is that right, Van?
Late September.
Late September?
So we will know the disposition of that grant application before we finalize the budget, which is
Yes,
good.
you should, yes.
Any other questions on this? All right, we're done with administrative services. I'd like the motion to place on file, please.
So moved.
So moved by John, second by Stan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Let's move back to Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, which would be on page 50 of tonight's book.
Correct. Okay, this budget too is basically prepared based on status quo and will be subject to your decision-making as we move forward. The public safety sales tax is, the quarter cent for public safety is completely flat this year. It has an up month and it has a down month. So it is showing no growth on an annualized basis from fiscal 2013 to fiscal 2014. I have projected it with a 1.5% rate of growth for fiscal 2015, hoping that's reasonable. It is, the other quarter cent is growing at a faster rate, and of course, the difference between the two is vehicle sales are included in the first quarter cent and not in the public safety quarter cent. There is a listing there on page 50 of what is included in this budget. I would point out, most of them are, the 121 for software maintenance, that's for the sheriff's share of New World software, which has always been part of the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund to pay for justice technology. Number 2 is budgeted transfer to capital asset replacement for equipment for this criminal justice system offices, and that also is higher than it was in fiscal 2014, and that is because we're fully funding the reserve on that, so it's at 185,531. And then going on down, there's the 230,747, which is the 5% for delinquency prevention grant funding, which you also heard about earlier this week. And it was noted in the budget process that there was $128,000 left unspent from the past 5 or 6 years in delinquency prevention grant funding set-asides, so that they are planning to use a portion of that in the remainder of fiscal 14, and $83,251 of those previously unspent revenues are budgeted in fiscal 15, which is why more than 230 is budgeted. Annual fees on debt service, $80,246 transfer to general corporate fund is a decision that was made as part of the programming request last year. That pays for a lieutenant in corrections who focuses on classification. The $8230 on number 6 is to pay for that lieutenant's health insurance. $40,000 is budgeted for the final phase of the Gorski Reef Stack contract, which that is the worst case, based on the estimated final phase of that project, which would be done in the next fiscal year in January. $100,000 is budgeted to transfer to general corporate to pay for reentry. $59,919 is budgeted for transfer to the specialty courts fund to cover the specialty court coordinator position, which you also heard about last night. $441,586 is budgeted to transfer to general corp to offset the utilities costs of public safety buildings. That is equal to the amount that was budgeted this year. We hit that in June. In prior years, the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund has spent closer to $800,000 for those utilities costs, but again, that was cut last year to allow some of the other funding. And then $3.5 million for bonds.
Stan?
Several questions, so bear with me. Number 3, the 5%, I've said this before, I think we need to take a look at that, especially with the condition of our jail buildings and court facilities. I don't know if, I would like to see a moratorium placed on it, whether that be for 3 years or 5 until we get some of this needed work done. That's my first comment, if that can be done. Number 5 and 6, the lieutenant, is that a one-time deal or is that an ongoing deal?
Well, you added a lieutenant's position and funded it from the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, so I viewed it as ongoing. That's up to you.
Well, I would look, in my mind, because I remember some of the conversation, I'm just throwing this out for discussion. They were trying to get that set up and get it geared up and get it going, but once it's going and they have it running, I would think that that should go back underneath the sheriff's salaries and put it back in there instead of this fund paying for it on an ongoing basis, because that becomes ever-ending, like a school resource officer. So once that's up and running, I think this board ought to look at that and say, maybe give them a year to get it done and say, okay, now you got it, in my mind. Number 8, the 100,000, I guess that's going to be looked at, so we'll look at that. If it's working, fine. If not, I think that, as I've said before, it's nice to do all these things, but we have a lot of other issues I think we need to look at. We heard about the nursing home tonight needing $355,000 for a lint trap. And if we don't do that, it leads to more problems. And number 9, is this the one that's for drug court and that, the 59.9?
Correct.
That's another avenue I look at when I ask the questions. It wasn't there before. It was put in there. I realize it does a lot of good, but $60,000 in my mind would pay for some good equipment for our buildings. And it's not saying it would go away forever, but if we never fix the problems we now have in place or start fixing them, we're going to create more problems. And I realize that the offset on this is going to be from the other side, that if we put folks in jail, we're going to spend more money there. Who knows? You know, what were they doing before they had this guy? I don't see any, as Patsy always says, give me a list and statistics and paper and numbers and all that other good stuff. But these are avenues I think that we should look at the budget and probably put a hold on some of that, redirect it to our buildings, get them up to snuff. And you know, with that money, maybe in 2 or 3 years, look at the things we can fix and improve on, then go back to doing some of these worthwhile items. Thank you.
Well, there's 3 of us who want to go after Stan on this. James is
just make sure your guns aren't
waving at me. Go ahead. I'll give it to James and then to Josh and then to me if I haven't covered everything.
I have a question for Stan, actually.
Go right ahead.
I mean, moving this out of this area and putting it into the sheriff's budget or into another budget, it's a zero-sum game, right? So are you suggesting that we should pay for that from property tax rather than a specific quarter-cent sales tax that at least at one time was supported by the public? I can tell you that not everybody still supports it. You can't just say move it out. You're either advocating for ending it or you're advocating for paying for it a different way. And I'd like to let you elaborate on that when you have a chance.
Go ahead, Stan.
I'll get back to you next month.
Okay. Josh? Josh?
I kind of agree with the sheriff paying his budget, though I do get James's point is stealing from Paul to pay Peter a little bit. But I think the position, the sheriff should take care of his positions ultimately through his budget, rather than this being out by itself, just for organizational purposes. Secondly, $3.5 million is going towards buildings and paying for new buildings and buildings that are obviously way overbuilt over the juvenile detention center. A lot of this money is going towards buildings. I agree with you, we need to take care of our stuff, but I know that when the public supported this safety sales tax, they wanted some of it to go into programming. I think as a percentage, it's minimal and should be more, but you know, if people aren't finding a way to spend it all, maybe we can find a better way to spend it than specifically this delinquency prevention. If that 83 grand could go towards something else, I could be supportive of that, but just shoveling it right at more buildings and more equipment as yet unnamed, I can't be for. We spend plenty of this safety tax on buildings.
Sure, go ahead, Stan.
Your comment's well taken, but the quarter-cent safety tax, when I came on this board, was supposed to sunset, and the new powers to be let it roll on, so the public was under the estimation none of these things would be financed by it. So, you know, we can argue all day about what we should and should not be doing. I just think that when we see a sum of money, we divvy it up and we put it out here. And when you're speaking about the buildings, I think a lot of that's going toward the bonds on them. It's not toward the maintenance on them.
It's all bonds.
So,
It's all bonds.
Yeah.
there you go, it's all bonds. I got it.
All right, now it's my turn, Stan.
Thank you.
Okay, the target's over there, I'm gonna start throwing some darts that way. When it comes to the drug court, okay, this 59,000 is a drop in the bucket to what that drug court has saved us. More than $1.5 million have been saved of incarceration over the years that this drug court has been in existence. This 59,000 will keep it running. I can't even calculate how many crimes have been prevented. When you look at this last 7 graduates, there was something like 56 felonies, a dozen other types of crimes that now will be prevented because these people are off the crime list. This is more than just dollars. This is safety to our community and savings of literally $1.5 million. So for 59, I think we're saving a lot of money just having the expenditure on this. Ralph, go ahead, and microphone, please.
My dim and faulty memory tells me that this tax was instituted primarily for programs to prevent recidivism.
And it's exactly what it's doing. Thank you, Ralph. Any other questions on this issue? Geraldo?
Yes, I was wondering if Deb could refresh my mind or my memory regarding the 100,000 for reentry. Where did that come from, and how did we obtain that? Because I know last year was the first time we gave it out.
Right, the board approved that last year to be paid out of public safety sales tax. You did an RFP, you hired Community Elements, they have a one-year contract, it goes through March of next year, and this just assumes that the board wants to continue funding a reentry program. Again, these things here before you in this public safety sales tax, many of them are your decisions to make. And many of these things are here because of decisions that you made last year.
Yeah, but my question is, how was that money, that 100,000, being used before that?
Well,
Where
the
did it
public
come- where did
safety
it come
sales
from?
tax used to reimburse general corporate for all of the utilities costs for the facilities, and now it reimburses for half of them.
Oh, half, okay.
So that's one place that it's coming from.
So if we don't reimburse them at all, and then it will be double this amount?
Yes, but you must understand that everything that you do out of this fund impacts the general corporate fund, which also has issues in terms of revenue to expenditure. So, and that's true of, you created a lieutenant's position in the sheriff's office and funded it with this money. You created the position, it's your obligation to fund it. You're funding it with public safety right now. You can say that the sheriff should fund it, but the sheriff funds it when you put the general corporate fund expenditure authority in his budget for the position, so.
Chris?
So if we were taking from Peter to pay Paul, and we took this $100 for, that was being paid to the general corporate, where's the general corporate getting that $100,000 to
Chris, go ahead, you want
to
to?
correct
Yeah,
that
I
gap?
think I can answer this. The answer is essentially it came out of fee increases. We passed the fee increases last year during the budget process, which amounted to on the order of $800,000, if I remember correctly, in projected increase. About half of that went to facilities, and about half of that went to a number of programs so that we were able to, because we knew we were going to get additional fee revenue in general corporate, we were able to reduce the contribution of the public safety sales tax to general corporate. So whether you call it general corporate or whether you call it public safety sales tax doesn't really make any difference. A dollar's a dollar. I think the answer to your question is the way we got the extra money to both beef up the facilities expenditures and these programs was through fee increases.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, where are we now?
Jim?
Excuse me? Jim, I'm sorry.
So I understand, actually. I think we have two issues, and one is taking care of the buildings, because when we don't actually take care of the buildings, like with the current jail, the satellite jail, we don't seal joints, then we have to have studies of the jail and the cost of those repairs, because those joints aren't sealed, may be as much as 10 times greater than they would be if we just did the maintenance to the buildings. The same thing happens with the downtown jail. When we don't take care of roofs, we don't take care of buildings, then we lose the building completely, and then it's unusable. So there's got to be a balance between some of the issues that I am supporting, like reentry or youth assessment, and taking care of the buildings that we have, because when we don't, we're replacing complete chillers rather than doing maintenance on them. They're more expensive. Now, line 3 talks about $230,000, and then $83,000 that we didn't, I don't believe, move into a program to be used. Now, those are the types of things I think we need to think about. Now, the Youth Assessment Center, they asked for another $90,000. Some of the, and I'm not sure where these things are in lines, but the court services asked for more personnel, and maybe those are in their own budgets. But those are the type of things we have to decide what we want or don't want. But we obviously have to take care of the buildings because they're falling apart, I think.
But I also think, and I would tend to agree with Gary, and he's not here today, about creating a maintenance master plan, because I think sometimes we throw good money after bad, because anytime, something happens and then we're rushing over here to fix this building, that if in the long run we would have had a master plan to maintain it, like the downtown jail, we wouldn't be in the predicaments that we're in today.
I think we're getting off the track here. Let's stick, this is budget, let's stick to that, please. John?
I think I overheard that Dana is working on maybe a master plan to give
Master
us a
plan.
better idea of what our buildings
And
do
Gary
need.
was talking about an engineer.
Pardon me?
And Gary was talking about hiring an engineer so that it could also be looking at these buildings and facilities.
Okay, I don't care what's an engineer or Dana or both. I'm saying that we are looking at that, and until we have that, we're really kind of spinning our wheels. But I do agree with Stan, and have since I've been on this board, that we watch our buildings crumble underneath of us, and we make some silly excuse that this is more important than our buildings, and we're not spending the money on our facilities that we need to be spending them on. And we're not going to do it unless we finally make up our mind that we are going to take care of the buildings and not try to go around and put a Band-Aid on them.
There's no master plan.
John,
That's up to
thank you.
us.
Chris?
I mean, I can't disagree with that. I mean, I am pleased that we are spending about $500,000 more on facilities rehabilitation than we've spent last, in this current year, than we spent in any other year I've been on the board, which I believe the number was 0. So I think we're at least trending in the right direction.
Stan?
This latest issue with the satellite jail, when the sheriff called me, he was very worried about if there would be some building falling apart or something like that. He'd have to move all his prisoners, his staff, so forth and so on. So that's why I'm looking at these budgets and I'm saying, you know what, folks, we've got some issues. We need to get out and look at them, but we really got to start looking at that budget, and it's going to hurt everybody. And I'm not saying forever. I said a moratorium for 3 years until we get things up to snuff. But that's what we're here for, to make hard choices. We're not here to always please everybody. You know, you don't do that with our children or with our partners. But we do need to look at this and do some serious stuff. No matter how good all that other stuff is, we've got issues.
All right, let me have thank you all. Let me have a motion to accept the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund report. So moved by Stan, second by Ralph. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on. Capital Asset Replacement Fund, please.
The capital asset replacement fund is on page 59. I'm sorry, what?
There's an exchange, 59 to 62
Were,
on
were,
new pages.
you had new pages tonight,
on your desk there somewhere. Okay.
page replacements,
Those are your
right?
new pages.
Okay. As I said in both of the last budgets, the capital asset replacement fund for all of technology vehicles for all general corporate fund departments is presented with returning to fully funding future reserve as well as what will have to be purchased next year. This results in a 32% increase in contributions to the fund over fiscal 15 of $296,633. And again, this is only for the technology, vehicles, and equipment sections of it is not for the facilities budget that's in capital. You see the chart there that even with doing that, we are really maintaining, we've increased the fund balance in 2014, and it pretty much stabilizes in 2015. If we don't do that, if we stay with current funding only, which is a decision you can look at later, there would be savings to both the general corporate fund and the public safety sales tax fund by taking that step, but there's greater risk in future years of significant spikes. For example, the sheriff is scheduled to replace all of the MDCs in the squad cars in 2017. That's a $350,000 expense for which we only have reserved $140,000. If we wait until then, we'll have $210,000 just for that one item in 2017. That's an example of the kinds of issues that you deal with through this fund. With that, though, I would then point you to so all of the budget documents are pretty boring. It just shows revenue and expenditure, but it's based on a spreadsheet for each department that we maintain, showing what they require to continue their operations and replacing technology in a timely manner. If you go to page, 105059, where is it? There, page 79. This is what I did for you for this budget, but the facilities director, Dana Brenner, will be presenting a recommendation to the facilities committee at next week's meeting, which is greater than this. All I did was put in looking at maintaining the dollars at exactly what went into capital facilities this year, which was $532,261. And these are some projects that I had from a report that I had from Dana a few weeks ago that are included. This does not match what Dana's request will be, and so I'm just telling you, this is a placeholder until facilities reviews the recommendation and finance then receives that recommendation and determines what to do with it in September. So with that, are there any questions?
James?
I'm having trouble finding the county clerk's replacement fund
The
in
county
here.
clerk doesn't have one anymore.
So the reason why I was looking for it was because of our conversation the other night about the $1.5 million
Yes,
of.
and I have to talk to him again, but he basically, well, all of that equipment was obtained through a grant, and it was never placed into capital. And he has an automation fund, but it's something that we're going to have to look at. But
Okay.
it's not here because it hasn't been presented.
Well, you know
or
why I'm asking,
requested.
so
Yeah,
that's why I was asking.
yeah.
Josh?
Is this also money that may go towards the purchase of the new accounting software system
Nope,
down the
we
road?
don't have that budgeted either.
That's not budgeted at
No.
all in this? With this fund, is this the fund that money needs to be budgeted into?
You know, typically, when you make a purchase, the first time you make a big purchase like that, it has to come from another source. But
Okay.
then what you do is you
Maintenance
begin
goes to one.
amortizing for its replacement.
Geraldo, did you have your hand up?
No, never mind. I can
James?
wait.
That's typically the automation funds that buy it
Right.
up front,
Right.
and then you replace it over
But
time.
the auditor doesn't have an automation fund, and neither does the county board. So for the accounting system, we're going to have to figure out a different way to pay for.
Patsy?
Just out of curiosity, and our county clerk seems to stay on top of things fairly well, but isn't a lot of the country moving to online voting? So we may not have this issue of voting machines that James just talked about.
I think there's a couple different avenues that are being pursued. I read an
Okay.
article this week about an in-house developed system too, so.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions on this fund? All right, motion to accept on file, please. So moved by Ralph, second by Stan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the Debt Management Capital Projects Fund, please.
Okay, the debt services funds are here for your information. I really don't have much to say about them. We have, set aside revenues for the payment of our debt service each year, and these documents just provide you with that information. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Motion to place on file? So moved by Chris, second, please. Stan, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. IMRF and Social Security.
No, actually, we're on the construction funds on page 90.
Whoop.
We did debt management, this is capital projects, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Page 90 is the court's construction fund, and as you are aware, we did the exterior maintenance project out of the court's construction fund this year. Next year, the facilities director, Dana, has identified that we need to replace the windows in the old courthouse, the 1901 courthouse. They're going on 30 years old and need to be replaced. And there is a need for parking lot improvements. So that is budgeted here out of the court's construction fund rather than out of capital facilities, because we have this fund to take care of the courthouse, at least for the immediate future. So that's budgeted there. The highway facility construction fund is still in existence, but we anticipate moving that revenue back to motor fuel tax this year because there's no reason to maintain this construction fund anymore. And similarly with the Art Bartel construction fund, we anticipate moving that money back into general corporate this year.
Any questions? Motion to place on file? What? So moved. Ralph, second. Aaron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on.
Okay, IMRF, page 94. Really good news about IMRF. Our rate went down. We retired our debt, and we're coming off of a 13-month fiscal year, so our IMRF levy is decreased in 2015 by $222,012, an almost 7% decrease. All of the rates went down. The regular rate went down, the SLEP rate and the ECHO elected county officials rate dropped 12.5%. So that was good overall for IMRF.
Patsy.
And
Do you see that as a continuing trend, or are we just lucky this coming year?
well, it was kind of a perfect storm. I mean, we
Okay.
paid off the debt this year, which was a $400,000 annual expense, and we we budgeted for 13 months of IMRF expenses with our property tax this year, and now we're going back to 12. So I would expect it to be more flat in the future. Social Security Fund, similarly, drops just a little bit, and because of coming off of a 13-month fiscal year, it drops just by that 1 month, basically. So there's a decrease in the Social Security as well.
Any questions? Sorry, any questions? Motion, John.
I have a question. Deb, on these two funds we've zeroed out, do we need to eliminate these two funds, just get rid of them so they're not on the books, or you just want them zeroed
The
out?
construction funds?
Yeah,
We
the
will.
highway facilities and Art Bartel construction.
Yeah, they'll be zeroed out in 15. We have to carry them on the books until 15 doesn't show up in our budget documents, but they'll be effectively closed. at
There's,
the end.
all right. Do we have to do anything?
Nope.
Maybe from court, I mean, from the county board standpoint,
No.
anything? Okay.
Any other questions? Motion to place on file, please. Aaron, Stan, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so tort immunity. So, you know, for years, we haven't had enough money to cover our contribution to tort immunity through the property tax. But all those savings that we just saw from IMRF and Social Security can be appropriated to the tort immunity tax levy for fiscal year 2015, and we balance, which is great news because that has been an increasing deficit for the last 8 years.
Get ahead.
So that's very good news. We'll still have a negative fund balance, but it won't be getting more negative next year as it has every year for the last several years. And that negative fund balance is offset by self-funded insurance fund because that's where all of the tort immunity money goes to pay for general corporate's liabilities into self-funded insurance. And the self-funded insurance fund has a very healthy fund balance at $4.3 million. So even with the $1.7 million deficit that it absorbs from tort immunity, we're still well above the $1.5 million fund balance goal for self-funded insurance. So that is hopefully good news to all of you that at least we've reached that point where we are no longer, you know, losing every year on the tort immunity expenditures.
Any questions? James?
So Deb, what happened in 2006 that started that trend?
That we began losing money?
What was the key factor that, because that's a little bit before the craziness of the economy.
Yeah. I'd really have to go back and look.
I'm just
I really
curious.
don't. I really
don't think
don't
it's
remember.
important. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I could check.
Any other questions on these funds? All right, let's have a motion to place on file, please. Stan and John. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That's it.
That's it.
We are done. Motion to adjourn, please. Motion. So much. Stan, second. Stan and Stan. I got the twins. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.